So first of all, I would like to start with thanking all of you to take out your time and joining on a Saturday afternoon. It takes a lot of effort to pull yourself to computer again on after like 5 days of working. So I would like to thank all of you first, and then I would like to thank Kasam for organizing these webinars for us, where we can learn about Azure. And today we are going to learn about Azure blueprints, or in another words, we can talk about Azure governance. So a little bit about myself. My name is Mohit Chhabra. I work for a company called MediaWesen GmbH in Germany. I am Microsoft MVP for Azure, and I blog on a site called AzureGuide.in. So before we start, I just have a small question for all of you. As any one of you is there who is already working on Azure, or is there anyone who have never worked on Azure in the first place? And as we have a limited audience, I would like to keep it interactive. So if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to stop me and ask your questions. But for the rest of the time, I will request everyone to mute your mic so that we don't disturb the sessions. If there is anyone who has never worked on Azure, please let me know. I will start with something uh, so that you have a little bit based on Azure. But I hope the rest of the people have already understanding of what is Azure and how does USS support it. Perfect. So let's start with the session now. So often we have seen that in the companies, what happens is there are like different teams and different cloud teams, and which are creating the resources for different environment, different clients, and into a different subscriptions. But what happens is there is no uniformity in the whole process. Someone is creating the resources with group names or the names like XYZ, but other ones is naming with ABC. So there is no uniformity throughout the uh, resources and throughout your subscriptions. And what happens basically is due to multiple teams, everyone is trying to implement their own strategy or implement their own governing model, which results in a lot of conflicts and which results in maintainability issues. Also, we have like resource ARM templates, resource manager templates, which we can use to deploy the resources to maintain the consistency. But what we have seen over a period of time is that with those ARM templates, people are pushing those ARM templates, but it's not uniform across the multiple subscriptions or multiple clients. So it becomes the role of the engineer who write the ARM template to write another document explaining that ARM template and how to deploy it and what is the scope of that ARM template. But the issue with those documents is they we need an engineer to implement those documents and read those documents. They don't compile on themselves. So what happens is if someone misread that document, there is a chances of not streamlining the whole environments or missing out some points. So what we have seen is over the period of time, this maintaining the whole infrastructure or in Azure has become complicated. So what we used to do previously is in the traditional approach, we have the cloud engineering teams which were taking care of the your cloud resources, and the developers and ops teams has no direct access to your resources. They will talk to the cloud engineering team to do this stuff for us and maintain the infrastructure for us in the cloud. But over a period of time, people or companies have realized that it's not worth to spend the money or the on the cloud engineering team. Instead, we should have something called DevOps team, which has the capability of understanding the developers and operations, or which is a part of the dev team or operations team as well, and they do all the work with the cloud. So comes the cloud native governance. What happens in this is basically the DevOps team or the developers or the ops guys basically will have a set of rules defined for the your subscriptions or your resources, and they have to follow the rules through the policies. Now, what are basically policies? Policies is basically a set of governing rules that is defined so that all the resources follow those policies. For example, you can say that if a VM is there, a VM monitor system should be there as well. Or you can say that the resource group name should be starting with RG. And if someone is trying to create a resource group without the RG prefix in it, it should fail initially. So there are like tons of policies that you can apply for. One of the more examples that I can think of is basically if you say that if there is no tag in a resource uh, with the cost center in it, just delete the resource, or means don't allow the resource to be deployed in the first place. So there are like tons of things that you can define for your Azure subscriptions, but the good part about it, you can define the scope of those things as well. So Azure policy basically gives you the enterprise level compliance. What it gives you the power to basically define your custom policies, and there are a lot of inbuilt policies as well. When we go to the demo, we'll see that there are a lot of inbuilt policies that Microsoft has already applied for your resources uh, in order to have it streamlined. For example, it says that uh, new ARM VM cannot be deployed without a VNet. So in order to have a ARM-based VM, you need to have a VNet deployed for you. Similarly, you can say that whenever there is a new resource, if the dependency resource doesn't exist, you should deploy that resource first. For example, in a new resource group, if in a new sorry in a new resource, when we are creating a new resource, if a resource group doesn't exist, we will create the resource group first. Similarly, what happens in a policy-based environment is you can implement these policies for the host subscription level. Plus, we can implement to a management group level. So, for the people who doesn't know what is management group, we'll come to that later. Similarly, it gives you a real-time remediation as well, which means the it gives you the issue and tells you to resolve it before implementing the or deploying the solution. Also, with the services like Azure Advisors, it gives you the compliance or your score goes down if it's not following the policies. So this is how governance will look like. You can see that there are a number of policies already defined, and you can see that what are the resources which are not following the compliance for you. That if you can see on the screen right now, there are a few resources in this demo that are not following the policies defined by your organization. But from the DevOps point of view, the people who are implementing the or deploying the resources will have the error while just deploying the resources itself when the conditions are not met. So how does it work? Is basically when a user will try to create a ARM template, it checks for the Azure policy first and see if it matches the Azure policies. So it creates the cloud resource then. If it fails, then Azure policy will set a message to the ARM template that okay, this ARM template is not matching with the Azure policy defined for the cloud resources, and it will fail. So let's look at some of the example policies. We have the if then policy conditions over here. So all the policies are basically nothing but JSON templates. It's similar to your ARM templates that you have seen or worked with. So if in this kind of policy, we see that we have a if condition and a then condition. We say that if the field name and like condition says name prefaces or name suffix, we can say, okay, if the name doesn't start with XYZ, or for example, in a resource group, we can say if the name doesn't start with RG, uh, we should not allow the DevOps team to deploy that resource group in the first place. Similarly, if we want a specific SKU for a series of VM, we can say that all of the Microsoft Compute virtual machines is not in this, or this. We have defined the different SKU names in an array, that if the SKU is anything else than this, you should not allow the users to the deploy the resources or deploy the virtual machine in this case in the first place. So when we do the validation will fail itself at that place. So also here we have hard coded. It also allows you to put the parameters in it and make it more dynamic. So that means you can pass on the parameter of list of allowed SKUs uh, while you have the policy already created in such a way that it already enforced your like model or the SKU model uh, for the resources. So there are a lot of inbuilt policies that you can see, but there are a lot of sample policies as well that you can basically dig in and that might be useful for you into there and put it in your Azure subscription. The URL for that is github.com/azure/azure policy. So when does a new policy gets into effect? So basically, it has a different model. So keeps on scanning for new policies, and basically, typically new policies takes about 10 minutes of time to get affected or put into the place. But you we have basically different APIs as well that we can call to put it into place immediately. Also, uh, it has the capability of auditing if the policy doesn't exist. So, for example, if you have already created some resource and that are already present in your subscriptions when your policies were not there, in those kind of scenarios, it will basically go through those already created resources and evaluate them that how the if they are matching the policies or not. If they are not matching the policies, you will get the errors in the compliance section. We talk about there is a policy called deploy if not exists in one of the previous examples where we mentioned that if a resource group uh, if the dependency resource is not there, the resource will not deploy. Here we are saying that if there is already a resource that requires some external or additional resource to work for the compliance. For example, if there is a VM and you don't have a anti-malware extension added to it, just create that automatically and add it to it. Similarly, if you have a virtual network and you don't have a network watcher in that resource group, so it's basically will check for it, it will audit it and deploy if it doesn't exist. So we talk about the policies. Now these policies basically go for the subscription level or the resource group level. But we have often seen that a company or or that cloud native engineer team or the DevOps team will handle multiple subscriptions for different clients. together, and they want to enforce that if they are setting up the standard in one environment or one subscription, it should be followed across multiple subscriptions. So what is the redemption for that? We have a concept of management groups, which was not original concept from the Azure, but they realized over a period of time that subscription cannot be the top level of hierarchy in the Azure management, subscription management. So we need something on top of the Azure subscriptions as well. So they introduce a concept of management group, which allows you to basically uh, club together your different subscriptions and apply the rules on top of that, and so that you have a better management capabilities across multiple subscriptions in a management group. So you can basically put your budget restrictions on this management group and say that these kind of policies or the budget should be allocated to the different subscriptions in this specific management group. For example, you can put all single clients or the single products subscriptions into one management group. So, how does the management group works is basically we are trying to see if when we are trying to put a new resource, it will check for the Azure policy again, but it will check for in the multiple subscription and instead of just one subscription. If we have anything in management policy, and it will make sure that in any of the subscription which is a part of this and uh, this management group, all these policies should apply. One of the thing that we talk about is ARM templates. I think it's quite common now, and most of you might be using it from quite some time now, but I will take a couple of minutes to explain it to you. So basically, ARM templates are nothing but infrastructure as a code model for the Azure subscription, where you can define all your infrastructure in a JSON-based template and say that all of your different environments should be configured or deployed through the ARM template, so you have a uniformity across multiple subscriptions or multiple environments. But again, the limitation that we were seeing with the ARM templates is that we were able to we were able to create the ARM templates and deploy into multiple subscriptions, but managing those ARM templates requires any other different documents where you have the descriptions or the policies mentioned for those ARM templates. So we needed a separate policy containers or a blueprint where we can explain those ARM templates separately. So the ARM template is like simple JSON level structure where you have different variables, resources, and parameters. So basically you can set up the parameters, and it can reach and define the resources in such a way that you have all the resources management over there. So I will just skip the part and directly go to the Azure blueprints. So what happens is we had the different role-based access controls, RBAC policies, where you specify that these people will have this level of control over different artifacts. Uh, and then we have the policy definitions that we talk about, and then we have the ARM templates. But we needed a way to control them for your multiple subscriptions from a single place. So comes into the picture the Azure blueprints. This Azure blueprints basically allows you to manage your role-based access controls, your policy definitions, and your ARM templates from a single place, and then you can specify those and into the Azure blueprint and then apply to the different subscriptions or the inside hierarchies of resource groups. So we have seen the PPT. Let's go to a demo. So if you're not familiar with Azure, this is how Azure portal looks like. So we talk about Azure blueprints and management group. Let's start from the management group. So I have a tenant root group already, but you can basically go to your Azure subscription and then create a new management group. For this demo, I will just not create a new group because it will affect my subscriptions accordingly. But it's as simple as just giving a new ID and then giving a new group name. For example, uh, you can say that client one and then give some ID and then save it. It's as simple as that. But if you can see, I have like two subscriptions with me right now. Visual Studio Ultimate with MSD and the Microsoft Azure sponsorship. I have the owner access to both the subscription, but the way management group works is if you have the access to the management group, you will have the higher priority as compared to the owner of these subscriptions. For example, if you set up any rules in the management group, but you are the owner of that, but you're not, and you're not the owner of this subscription, still the priority of yours would be higher than the owner of that subscription. For example, the if we go to the management group and set up any policies of, let's say, the names or the region should be always central US, uh, then even if this owner of this resource group try to create a resource in uh, West US, he won't be able to do that because on the higher hierarchy it has been mentioned. So you have to make sure that you don't put the deny policies in the first day itself. Just try to settle it down, make sure that your cloud engineering team is able to understand how does it work and then deploy the deny policies. Also, if someone has the access to the management group, they already gets the inherited access to the child subscriptions as well, so that you have to make sure that if you're giving someone the access to the management group, he is already the owner of the, or he is already has the contributor access to all the resource group and he can manage all the resources across multiple subscriptions. So make sure about this inheritance policies or the access controls before you assessing anything to the management group. Now we talk about Azure blueprints. Let's see how does it work. So we have different level in Azure blueprints. Basically, first we create a new blueprint. We define what blueprint contains over there. Then you apply to a scope. The scope can be your subscriptions, one or more subscriptions, or even to a resource group level. Then we basically track whether it's working or not. So let's start with creating a blueprint. So by default, right now Azure gives you multiple blueprint types. There is a blank blueprint where you can basically go and create your policies and all RBAC controls and define it over there. But there are like a lot of samples as well that they have created. For example, this ISO ASC SQL workload. This is a sample compliant ISO 27001 compliant policies for this blueprint. So we'll say use this and see how does it work. It says that it deploys and configures ASE environments and secure DBs, and it extends the ISO shared service blueprint. It wants to see a location from in which substation you want to deploy. So I will say deploy it to Azure sponsorship. So if you see over here, it has already bunch of policies assigned for me. We will just go through that once we say that, okay, there should be a security center configured for it. Then you will have the different allowed location for the code resource group. What should be the storage SKUs? What should be the virtual machine SKUs? Rogue animated says in for our Linux VM, and so on and so forth. So these are basically according to the best practices that Microsoft have evaluated with ISO. So make sure that all the necessary resources that are required to make it compliant are already present in the environment. So for this demo, I will discard this and will try to create a blank one. I choose my substitution from here. Now, if I want to apply any policy on the substitution level, I will say over here that artifact types should be the policies assignment, and then I will assign the policy over here onto the subscription level. Similarly, if I want to assign any role-based access control in the subscription level, let's say I want to make a contributor to a particular person. So I can say like Kasam email ID and then put it over there and send him an invite for there. Or we can basically create this template and assign the values of it while we are assigning the blueprint in the first place. Similarly, you can put your ARM-based template as well that we have been using since some time. So you can basically upload your file from your Explorer, or you can copy paste it over here, and you can set up the parameters over here once you put the ARM template. But let's see how to put a policy on a resource group. So I am not setting the resource group name or the location name right now. We will set it up when we are assigning this policy. This is like if I set it up over here, it's like hard coding the values, and if I set it up while assigning, it's more like assigning on the runtime. So if I put over here now, you see the resource group is not available in the artifact list anymore because you have already assigned into a resource group. So we will say that in this resource group, if you have to put a virtual machine, this is the template you should use. So you can define that over here, or you can say in this resource group, the by default give the contributor access to some people, or by default set some uh, ACR push or ACR delete policy access to role-based access control different user or principals. This demo, what we will keep it simple and create a new policy assignment. Now, if you see, there are a lot of inbuilt policies. I will quickly go through a few of them for you. For example, audit virtual machine without disaster recovery configured. If you have a, especially in your prod environments, it's like the best practice to have a disaster recovery configured. So you make sure that in a DRDR scenario, you have a backup to follow up on, and your services are not down and your business is intact. Similarly, you have like calls requests, audit the calls resources, assess restriction for a function app. For the people who are developers will understand the pain of the cores issue that we face. So we have to make sure that the developers are not facing the cores issue with your functions app. So it should be allowed. Similarly, there are a lot of policies in previews as well, which they are testing it out, but which is not publicly accessible, means which is not advisable to use it for your production scenarios, but you should use it for your dev test environments. But once it becomes a GA, it's advisable to basically use for your production environments as well. But these are all the inbuilt policies. But what if I want to create my own policy, and then that policy that I want to put is not there in this inbuilt list, although it's a wide range of policy lists, but just in case if you want to create your custom policies, how we can do that and how we can assign. So I will show you how we can do that, but before I will show you that I already have one uh, custom policy, and there is a tag custom assigned to it over here. Here I say that name pattern with right condition. I will say add and save this draft. Now remember we mentioned that while publishing the this policy or this in the blueprint, we will have the option to assign the values. So that we are going to do that now. So we have the draft policy in place, but we have to publish it in order it to get implemented. So we have to put it give a version to it. I will say 0.1. And you can put your change notes in here as well. Oh, 0.1. I will say publish. So publish is successful. Now I will assign this blueprint. And here I have the option to set up those values. So the resource group name where we want to put this policy will be demo AZ, and the location will be say central US. Now the condition is that all the resources should, because it's a demo thing, all the resources should start from demo. So the policy has been assigned via this blueprint, and this blueprint has been assigned to the resource group. Now I will go to the source groups and select my appropriate subscription. I will go over here and let's try to create a web app. Eight. I will put some random name. so that we have the DNS available for it. Now, right now it gives you the tick because it's just checking for the validation that your URL or the DNS that you are putting it is available or not, and it's not the your policy validation for your subscription. So I will just make it Windows and then put it to the code and not a Docker image. Yeah. So here, if you see, I got the validation errors here itself, and then it doesn't allow me to create the new resource in the first place. Let me click on this validation error, and it says that there is a policy which is like name pattern with right condition, which is blocking you from creating this. So if I go over here, I can see there is a policy assigned to the this which has a parameter that it should have a demo in it and stuff. But your DevOps team would not be able to change anything over here. They have to reach out to the management group if they really want to change it. And only the owners of the management group who has the access to the management group will be able to do it. So even the owners of the subscription won't be able to change anything over here. So now we have seen a demo for the existing policies and a custom-based policy, but let's see how to create a custom-based policy. So if you see over here, I went to the policy sections, and it's went to, I will change the scope of it to my new or another subscription. It says that my 92% of the resources are basically compliant, but there are like 8% of the resources which are like non-compliant. So you basically can see what are the different policies which are uh, not complying or what is the states of it. But let me go to the definitions first. So by default, there are a lot of policies put together by Microsoft itself to make it a compliant system for Azure. But if you see, I have my custom policy as well over here. Rest everything is built in. But there are a lot of built-in policies as well, which is not defined, which is not assigned uh, by default. So basically, you can make use of them from the built-in policies control, but it's not by default assigned to your subscription.
So Mohit, Kasam here. A
Yeah,
quick
yeah.
question: is there any limit for assigning the policies, number of policies for a particular subscription, or
No,
again, acha, yeah.
yeah. You can define any number of policies for your subscription and for your management group itself.
So there is no categorization or group of like inbuilt policies and custom policies, any kind of count, upper limit count. We
No,
can.
there is no upper limit count to it as far as I know. The only thing is
Mhm.
there is only a categorization whether it's a built-in policy or created by the you as a custom-based policy.
Okay, and and does we have any limits for the limits in the sense for having any subscription? Like we do have an Azure Pass, we do have some other kind of subscription enterprise other than enterprise subscriptions. So
Yeah.
can we apply these policies to that subscription as well?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. That is why we have the concept of management groups, that you put
Okay.
together all the subscriptions into one place and then bunch them together into a uh, single group in a form of a management group. And all the subscriptions that are there in the management group can share the policies with them.
Right. As you mentioned earlier, that it was in top hierarchy above the subscription level.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello,
Yeah.
this is Cyclone.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Saikun.
Azure tenant like Office 365 account, which is the first user to sign into the Azure account. He is the topper of the admin.
Mm-hmm.
How many subscriptions you have? Like, is any restriction to only limited types of subscriptions that are, do you want like Azure tenant is some type of offices, so admin level, co-admin level? Is there any negotiable to subscription levels?
I didn't go to your question. Can you please come again?
You want to create an Azure Active Directory, Azure
Yeah.
tenant or is Microsoft is any limited to this type of subscriptions only this type of subscriptions levels only.
No, so Microsoft basically understand that there is a person who can have different type of access into different subscriptions, and he can be owner of different subscriptions as well. So they have not limited you to basically have number of subscriptions, because like in my previous organization, I had like around 180 subscriptions under my owner. I was the owner of like 180 subscriptions. So
Okay.
they have not limited you to be admin of multiple subscriptions or the owner of multiple subscriptions from a user point of view. So
But
if you
but
see from a CIO point of view, or if you have a CIO of a company or a CTO of a company, in that scenario you will have like access. You want to have the owner access to the all the subscriptions into different uh, places. So yeah, please go ahead.
there are different type of resources and different type of subscriptions. You want to
Yeah.
change in the different type of subscription, different type of resources to one subscription to another subscription. But there are the organization and number of subscriptions. But charge also different type of resources. How to calculate the charges based upon subscription levels or resources groups level?
Okay. Okay. That's a good question. So basically, you're asking that. How to calculate the charges, whether it's better to calculate the charges from a resource group level or a subscription based level, right? So
Yes, yes, right,
I
right.
was right. So I will say it depends how you have defined your whole architecture of your infrastructure. Like for example, if you have different environments into different subscriptions, then it's better to do it with the resource group basis. Uh, for example, you can have a test subscription, you can have a dev subscription, then you can have a prod subscription. In this kind of scenario, in a test dev prod subscription, you can have the same subscription for multiple clients or multiple products, but you can have a separate resource group for the single product or client. So
Okay.
you can go to the resource group level and see how much you are spending for that particular product or client. So it depends upon how you have defined your infrastructure in the first place. Similarly, if you have all the environments into one subscription for the, let's say, for a single product, for let's say the dev test or a prod are in the same subscription but into a different resource group, but and you want to see how much you have spent for a particular product or a client, you can basically then go through the subscription based level. So I would say it depends upon your initial implementation of your resources or your subscriptions.
My question is, you are creating the resource storage resources group to the one subscription. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
want to ask to the client, you can be the resources group moving to the another resources, another subscription only. The
Okay.
charges can be including starting to running time is one subscription and running stop to next motion is come to another subscription. Billing is charging to the first subscription or second subscription.
Okay, so as you know that Azure or any other cloud provider is basically goes with the pay as you go model. That means that you only have to pay for what you use. Similarly, if let's say we have a virtual machine, let's say or a storage account, as you said, in one of the subscriptions, and then you move that storage account to another subscription. So till the time for example, you moved on 15th of the month, so first 1 to 15th, uh, these expenditure will be charged on the subscription one, and the moment you move from the to the another subscription or the second subscription, it will start charging from the in the subscription two or the next
I am
another
asking
subscription.
about enterprise subscription only now. Pay per use, it is not even how much you pay, how
Yeah,
much you can use it.
even for EA subscriptions, even for
Okay,
EA subscriptions, it is the way that it's charged.
okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, until or unless you have a reserved instances in Azure, this is the way it works.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions right now?
Yes, no, that is mainly I am asking question.
No,
Thank you.
sure. Any other person have any other question? Okay, so we can go ahead with the demo. So this is how basically you will define a policy that you have to define the location of that policy. I can say go to the substitution that apply to this policy, and let me select this guy and give it a name. For example, it allows so the so here you can say allowed SKUs, that only this SKUs will be allowed to deploy, or if you see in the definition right now, the definition is for locations, that it only allowed you the specific locations for your resources and stuff. Also, you can basically import your policy from GitHub, as I showed you. The policy definitions can be found in the samples for different uh, resources. We have different policies. Here we can say that, okay, storage account assist here, for example, deny the cool assist steering for storage account. You can basically deploy with the PowerShell as well, or with the Azure CLI as well. So, or I will go to the policy definition here. Here it says that, okay, uh, for all of the Microsoft storage account, where the kind is blob storage, make sure that it's always cool. Similarly, for different resource group, we can get and say that I will request all the participants to mute their mic, please. Thank you. Here we say that, okay, for the resources which have tags, that's you have to enforce the tags on the resource group. Let's go to the definition. We can say that it's mandatory to have a tag cost center in your resource group. Without that, it won't allow you to deploy the resource group in the first place. Similarly, you can have the SKUs for the multiple types. Like you can just say that the SKUs for storage account and virtual machines had this. Let's go to the policy definition, and here we can see that here list of allowed SKUs for VM, and there is an array for storage. So we go to the definition, and we have passed it as a parameter over here, so that the allowed SKUs for storage is there are two SKUs, and for the VM that's only one type of storage account. So I will appreciate you to go through these policies, different policies over here. Try to read their policy definitions by going through your GitHub account, and then putting to your resource groups. And I will appreciate if you don't put it to a management group level, because in that scenario, the other people of you will not be able to run or do anything, and they won't. It can be a troublesome experience for the other users if they don't know that you have put some policies in place for specific things. So I will see if you want to try something out, try it in your dev subscription onto a specific resource groups. Means you can create a specific resource group for testing purpose and then apply onto them, instead of directly going to the management group and putting the policies over there. So with this, I end my demo and session, and I'm open for questions.
So can you explain like what is the difference exactly between like policy definition and assignment?
So policy definition and assignment, right? So as the name suggests, that
Yes, correct.
definition tells you what does it does. So I will go to it and see that, for example, we created this built-in custom policies. So this is the definition of it, which tells you what it's meant to do. That in this scenario, it will check for the it will check for the name pattern, and if it fails, it will deny the resource to be created. This is the definition of it. I can go here and show it to you and then change it. So it's a pattern to use for names, which can include a wildcard, spell in this and that. But what is an assignment? Basically, assignment, if you come over here, it says assign this policy. Now you have created some policy, but it needs to have a scope. That scope for me in this scenario is the resource group. This policy exists in the resource in this subsection, but I can go ahead and assign it to the my any subsection. For example, this one. So then this policy would be shared across multiple resource groups as well. But to streamline this process, we have the blueprints in place, where you basically define that policy in a blueprint itself, and then assign the scope of that blueprint to the whole resource group or the subsection level. So if you come over here, if I edit this blueprint and go to the artifact, instead of assigning the policies to the we have assigned the policies to this resource group level in the blueprint itself. Assigning the policies directly is also possible, but it's not much appreciated right now, because again the whole management would be troublesome into different resources, different subscriptions. We'll run into the same issue that we are running with the ARM templates right now, that it's like a monolithic templates with different people working on them. Similarly, if we put a policy, separate policies over there, and then assign it to a separate resources individually, then you need to keep a track of it or maintain some documents, which is always a troublesome. But in this scenario, you can just directly come to your blueprint and then see how does my blueprint look like. Okay, in this resource group, we have this policies assigned and all that stuff. So this is a more managed way of organizing things in the enterprise level scenarios.
Thanks.
Welcome. Do we have any other question?
No, I'm good.
If we don't have any other
I
questions,
believe,
yeah,
no, I believe we don't have any more questions coming in,
okay,
and we
okay,
have almost reached to. Yeah.
perfect. So this concludes the session for today, and I will like to thank all of you for taking out time to come and learn about Azure governance. Also, if you have any questions on Azure or Azure governance, I can give you my credentials. So this is my email ID. And I have a Facebook group called Microsoft Azure for Beginners. I keep sharing some resources or keep answering the questions of the community in this Facebook group. So feel free to join this group and post your queries. Me and Kasam, and there are a lot of other experts who are available in this group, and they would like to answer your queries if you have any queries on Azure. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.